the words would be written as a message of love, of how the true disciple, the faithful believer, was to view their fellow man. Now aged amidst the years, the Apostle John sat composing the first of his epistles. As he did, the timeless nature of brotherly love and compassion weighed on him. For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. Familiar to all is the story of Cain and Abel, the first children born outside of the glories of Eden. Yet what is the lesson that it holds, and how does it come to bear in the lives of the believers who are seeking the knowledge of the Lord's wisdom amidst their own lives? This is life, toil. And wherefore should I toil? Because my father could not keep his place in Eden? What had I done in this? I was unborn. I sought not to be born, nor loved the state to which that birth has brought me. Why? Why did he yield to the serpent and the woman? For yielding, why suffer? What was there in this? The tree was planted, and why not for him? The soliloquy of Cain in the opening scene of Lord Byron's play. The tale of Cain and Abel, those first children born to Adam and Eve after their expulsion from paradise. It's been a story that's been told and retold over and over again. From the Divine Comedies of Dante to John Steinbeck's East of Eden, their name and their story, it has weaved its way through our culture and our consciousness in the most significant of ways. Then why not? It is, after all, an important story, for it does not just tell us of the nature of sin, but of our duties to one another and to our God. Even thousands of years later, it remains a critical story of great magnitude, for it is more than just a chronicling of Cain's sins. It's more than just a chronicling of the jealousy and the murderous deed that overtook him. It's more than just a telling of Abel's righteousness and the vengeance that was exacted upon him by his brother for it. It tells of the calling that each person has in their life to transcend their baser human nature, so that they might do better and live better according to the admonition and the calling of the Lord, giving him his proper praise while loving their fellow man. It is there then that even from the most egregious of sin, even from the most horrendous of deeds, that we come to learn something of the nature of God and the nature of his calling, as we seek to live according to his will and his desires, putting aside our own corrupted character as we seek out his righteousness. How then is it that God shows his people that lesson? And even as he finds that the iniquity of men, it robs other men of what is not theirs to take, as they fail to abide in his teachings, does God still offer his mercy and his love unto them? And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Cast from the garden of Eden amidst her first iniquity and that disobedience that would shut the gates of paradise to them, as they found themselves now sent out into the world. Adam and Eve, those most beloved of the Lord's creation, they would begin to make a life for themselves. The first command that the Lord would give them, be fruitful and multiply, they would now abide in, and unto them would be born 2 sons, Cain and Abel. Through the sins of their father and their mother, the transgressions of their hands as they gave in to the temptations that were placed before them by the serpent, they would be born amidst a corrupted nature of that tarnished character that would be tainted by their parents' offense. They too would toil in the fields for what it would yield as it produced thistle and thorn for them, and they struggled for all that they had by the sweat of their brow, the dust rising up to their lungs. They would become workers of the ground and the pasture. Cain, a farmer and a planter growing the crops, and Abel, a shepherd, the keeper of the flocks. Each would serve their purpose according to the Lord's will and his desire, working to offer what was needed to sustain and to shelter them amidst this harsh temporal existence that they now dwelt amidst. It was here, living in that corporal plane, that they were undoubtedly taught about their sinful nature, about the imperfections of their flesh by their father and their mother. After all, it was not by instinct and instinct alone that they knew to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. It was not by instinct and instinct alone that they knew to give themselves in humble supplication to the Lord their God, that they might plead for forgiveness and mercy for their sins. They would come before the Lord their God with their offerings to be made. Abel was the fat of his flock, with the most worthy and the purest of the sheep, the firstborn of his pastures. This, while Cain would come with some of the crops that he had produced. It was the younger brother who would earnestly seek God. It was the younger brother who would earnestly seek after his heart, trying desperately to do that which was acceptable to him as he offered up his sacrifice. Yet the older. For the older, it would seem that it was nothing more than an afterthought to him as he rushed to make his offering without even searching or exploring his heart and his soul, that he might humble himself before the Lord. It would be apparent to their Creator as both of the sons of Adam and Eve came before him, for he would draw pleasure and look favorably on the sacrifice of Abel, while ignoring the sacrifice of Cain. Yet Cain, he could not see beyond his own rage and his own anger. It was not that he had offended God, it was that his brother had offended him. He was his father's son, and as the sins of his father overtook him, and the evil thoughts would enter into his mind, he would try to escape his own accountability. He would try to escape his own sense of responsibility. Still, God would offer him words of comfort. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou dost well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. God looked into Cain's heart, and he saw the sin that was in there. He looked upon the thoughts of iniquity, and he warned him, telling unto him that he must strive to do better. He must strive to do more. He must seek and desire to rule over sin rather than let it rule over him. The only desire of the Lord was for Cain to draw closer to him, and he told him how to, by searching out a path to righteousness, by looking upon his brother with love and learning from his example, letting it edify his spirit. Yet Cain would not see it in the same light, and he, as his father and his mother before, would turn from the Lord to pursue his own understanding, believing he could hide his sins from the Lord God Almighty as he tried to establish his own dominance upon this earth.